Good morning and welcome back to the channel. My name is Deborah, aka the Sunsetgirlcreates, and today we're working on our design a shawl from start to finish. So let me tell you where we're at, and I'll tell you what's going on, and if we have time after we've gone over all the stuff we're working on, we will be reading an article from the Yarn Council, Craft Yarn Council, on yarn standards. Industry standards and guidelines for designers. So what I'm trying to do on this day on Fridays is it is going to be consistent of designing some kind of knitwear, whether it be a sweater, a shawl, a hat. So I have to do some hats too. I have to pop up some hats and send them off for Christmas presents. Yeah, I'm wearing the same clothes as Tuesday, or Wednesday, but that's only because I'm recording both videos today. Okay, so the next thing I'm working on, so I've done the setup rows on our shawl. This is the beginning of the shawl. I'm making a mini shawl as my gauge swatch, and I'll tell you why. I want to see, because it's a shawl, one thing, I want to make sure that when I'm done with it, it's draping the way I want. Or do I need to move up a needle size? Because right now I'm using I believe they're my 2s. Yeah, they're my 2s and they're a solid circular. They're not part of my Chagoo kit. Now I do have the full Chagoo of the standard needles and all of the mini needles. I don't have the great bigger needles because I don't use them, so there's no reason. My favorite needles to use are the Chagoos. I use them almost exclusively on my projects. I have one that I'm working on that is on a different kind of needle, but I like the metal. It slides really well. Sometimes I have to check myself because I'm using my Malabrigo yarn on this project, okay, and so it's a very soft wool yarn, okay. It's really pretty. I like the variegated. It's a darker one. Most of my shawls are on the lighter side, so I kind of wanted to do one in a darker, and I wanted to try my hand at finding stitch patterns I want to put into a design. So the first thing I did when it came to designing, I'm going to put this down because now I'm going to show you some books and what we're working on. And so when I decided I wanted to do a shawl, and the first thing I had to come up with is what shape. Okay, I want to do the heart-shaped one, so I need to make sure that when I'm doing my increases and making sure that they're going to increase properly to go up and around at the top part. Okay, so that's what we're working on. I have charted my pattern. I use Pattern Genius, I believe it is. It is Pattern Genius. I use that for my actual creating of the stitch pattern. Okay, it has notes. I can do just about anything I want in this program. It lets me add stitches if they're not part of it. They let me make manipulations so I can make sure that my I can't think of it now. Went blank. Oh, I hate that. Don't you hate that when you're talking about something and your whole mind goes blank and you forget what you're talking about? Anyways, I've got the gauge swatches done. I picked out both of the stitch patterns I want to use. I have 2 different patterns going on, and it was trying to make sure that you had just the right number to bring in your pattern but still keep your standard stitches that are increasing and decreasing through. So the first thing I used and I'm just trying to move something so I can move the computer off the books because I have the computer set up with the article on industry standard and guidelines for designers. So I'm going to be going over that. So the first thing I did is I was going through and I was trying to find a different kind of stitch pattern than what I've done that's open, airy, and kind of different. So I found this extended open work stitches, and I like the drop stitches. Okay, I think drop stitches are fantastic in a pattern. I did one in a shawl, and it was just amazing. It turned out phenomenal. So I went ahead and I chose this design. So this design right here is the first design we're going to be using, and that's the extended open work stitches. Okay, so isn't that really pretty? It looks almost like a plant going up, and it's all these long stitches. I think those long stitches are cool. So do you know how to do that? We'll be doing that. It's coming up in our pattern pretty quickly. So I put this stitch pattern in. This stitch pattern calls for a multiple of 6 plus 2 stitches for the rim of each edge. So on each side is a knit. Okay, it's really a simple pattern. It is a four row repeat. It's very simple, easy, engaging, but looks beautiful. Okay, so that was the first one. Then the next one was finding one that had those multiples or of something that divided by 6. Okay, because I have to have 6. Those 2 stitches are my end numbers, so I'm not counting them as I put it together. In the actual pattern, I only put those stitches at the beginning and end of the actual pattern repeat. And I will go through, and I think I do 2 and 3, which are the extended. I do those a couple times. So I do the repeat twice, and then we go on to the next one. And I had a really open, fancy, kind of swirly one that looks kind of like plants. And so I found in my so the first book I was doing showed you is 750 knitting stitches, the Ultimate Knit Stitch Bible. I have that, and I got it from Amazon. I'll leave a link to it below, as well as I have the knitting Bible. It's 200 stitches explained with written instructions and charts. So we get the charts and that. And I love the fact that they put the written instruction and the charts in the knitting Bible. They do in my 750 stitches. They don't do the chart unless it's like a complicated something, but most of the time it's just a stitch pattern out in written form. So then I went to this, and I was looking in the lace and eyelet stitches, and I didn't want something that was totally open, but I wanted something that kind of mimicked what we were doing in the other, so that you could see both of them. And this one's more of that one's got the long stitches. When you're doing your cable, you're wrapping your needle 3 times every time you bring that first stitch in, and then you drop when you come the next round. And when you're dropping them, we're also making them a cable, so we're keeping 3 of them behind and working 2 and then working 3. So it makes it a really pretty, nice floral kind of look. And so I was trying to find one, and I found 2 different ones. The first one was just the Islet Chevrons, and it kind of mimicked, but it's in the wrong direction, right? I could either have it going in the same direction. See how this is? It's going, but it's upside down. Okay, so it's upside down to what our pattern looks like. So it does look cool, because you see in the middle it's making the flower, right? So that's cool. That looks cool. And I knitted it up, and I didn't like it much with the other one. Okay, so then I went to this one. I've knitted this one. This one is really, really pretty. It has this nice valley in here, but you see my stitches, they're all going in the upward position. It's a similar type pattern as what our drop stitch one is, so I'm thinking it's going to go really well. So what I'm working on now is now that I figured out what I wanted in the stitch patterns, right? I have a whole bunch of stuff coming on. So I've now put it all in my Pattern Genius. The pattern's all there. Then I can save it as a PDF, and it generates, and it takes whatever I charted, and not only does it generate the chart, but it'll also generate the written instructions. I don't have to write them. The program already does it based on what I've inputted in there. I still have to go back and fine-tune a few of the stitches, but we'll be fine when we're done, okay? So I'm working on, I've cast on and I've done the setup rows. It's a pretty simple setup row for the heart shape. So once I export, I then move it from where I'm working and creating. Then I go into Knit Companion, because Knit Companion is the one that I use when I'm actually working a project. I can go in and I can isolate the charts. I can isolate any written instructions that I want. So I can take that chart and make it a simple chart, and all you see is the actual chart. So this is what our chart looks like. We're working on this. This is the charting of what I did. So as you can see, this is our setup rows. You cast on 7 stitches. Then the next row, all you're doing is knitting 3 and then doing yarn over, knit 1, yarn over, knit 1 4 times. Okay? And then the next one is basically setting up for our center stripe. Now we're going to set up for our center stripe right here, right? And that one consists of knit 2, yarn over, oh no, the second one is knit 3, 2 purl, knit, yarn over, knit, 2 purls, and 3 knits. And then the next one in the last setup is 2 knits, a yarn over, knit 4, yarn over, knit 1, yarn over, knit 4, and knit 3. So that's what it is. Okay, so that's a pretty basic setup row. I did a little bit more extra setup row with just a solid little area right there before we jump into our stitch patterns. So now here's our stitch patterns. We'll be doing six crosses on, oops, sorry about that. We'll be doing 6 cables, or 3. We're going to gradually go up. So we're going to start with 2, and then we're going to go to 3, and then the next will be our next pattern. So here's our next pattern, right? Excuse me. And so that's our Lily of the Valley pattern, and see how nice that's going to go line up really nicely and go well with our cables. Then you go to the next one, and our cables get longer, so we have more cables, as you can see, and you have the setup row for the cables right below, and that's where you're wrapping, and then you go up. So I'm going to be doing 2 repeats to see how it's going to look, how it's going to drape, and see how they look together. The way I see it in my head, they're going to look beautiful together, but I want to make sure. So what I'm going to do is I'm doing the knit project now. So I'm taking the pattern that I've created, and I'm actually doing a shawl, and it's just started, okay? This was really finishing the setup row. I just finished all of the setup, and now I am on the purl row, which is on the back side. So we'll just get started. And why we're knitting, and all we're doing, because I'm at the gauge stage, right? I'm making my gauge swatch, and instead of doing a gauge swatch like you would for a sweater, which is just put rows in and knit or whatever pattern it is, this one's a shawl. So I want to see, when I'm making my gauge swatch, I want to see what it's going to look like when I'm done. So we're going to make a mini shawl, and I'll take pictures of that. We'll use that. That'll be our picture going forward once we get this done. It will be the picture on our slide so that everybody knows what we're working on. I will have a nice picture up there next week. And then we're just going to see our next steps. Now, what I've found is I'm on the Craft Yarn Council's website, and they're the ones that create and manage the yarn standards, whether it's for knitting, crocheting, whatever kind of yarn it is. They're the ones that educate. There's a lot of education on here. A lot of ways to find out how to teach. You have classes. You can take classes, become a certified instructor in knitting or crocheting or both. And then the other one that they have is they let you become a master knitter or a master crocheter. And in order to do that, you have to do, it's a very extensive program. I will be going through that program. I will be able to tell you a little bit of what happens as we go through it. That is not going to get started until I get all of my Social Security and disability and all that taken care of and wrapped up. So what we're going to be reading, though, is we're going to be reading the industry standards and guidelines for designers. So we are in the process of becoming a designer. So what do we need to do? So the first thing under the yarn standards section, it says industry standard and guidelines. Then where to start is your next one. Designer pitfalls. And then congratulations, you received the go-ahead. Okay, so we're going to be working through all of this process that the yarn standards say we need to do. So I'm going to start reading, and we're going to read this section. There is quite a bit that we can go into. Knit chart symbols, knit abbreviations, how to read a pattern, what's wraps per inch, project levels. So there's a lot of things in here that we'll be working through as we go through in our designer segment. So Fridays will be our designer segment. We will be designing something and working on something that we design on the channel. I won't be showing the pattern, but what I did is I showed you the basics. That's the standard skeleton of the pattern. The rest of the pattern will be, I'm thinking I'm going to maybe upload it to Ravelry or something as a free project. For the first one, it is my first design that I'm actually following the industry standards. I can do things with just pick up needles and start doing it, okay? And put something together in my head. And that's okay for when I'm doing pillows and things like that. But I really want to get used to this, because I'm going to spend some time going through all of the designing and industry standards and everything there is to do about knit. Because what I want to do is once I get the chance, I am going to sign up and become a master knitter. It is very important to me that I have that opportunity. And it's my way of keeping my knowledge fresh. And really, this is my job now. So I'm going to use it as my job. I don't work. I'm disabled. I get to do videos on YouTube. I don't make money on it. I just sit here and enjoy and share my love of the craft with you. So let's go ahead and see what they've got to say on this first part of industry standards, okay? As the demand, and I'm just going to knit as we go. So I'm still going to be looking back at you. I'm not completely looking away, but I am reading right now, so let me read and I'll be looking back at you. I think it's important for the eye contact to be there. Yes, I have droopy eyes. It is the way my eyes are. They've been this way all my life. It sucks trying to put makeup on. That's why I decided I like my skin. It's pretty. I don't have to do anything to change it. If I'm out working, I would put makeup on. But this is for me as much as it is for anybody else, to kind of document my experiences through this process. So I'm going to document my learning process, and maybe if I document my learning process, somebody else will learn from me. So that's really the goal. So As the demand for more and more crochet and knitting patterns has grown over the past decade, so has the demand for consumers for easier to read, accurate patterns. Concerned about the growing number of pattern complaints by consumers, the Craft Yarn Council members convened a special meeting to identify challenges at every level of pattern production. From the designer, where the pattern process begins, through the final editing printing process. The committee spoke extensively with editors and designers, and all agreed our ultimate goal is to keep today's knitters and crocheters enjoying the craft for years to come. So what are we going to do to ensure, the Yarn Council, what are they going to do to ensure that this is something that will continue to last through the years, right? Because we all know that crochet patterns and knitting patterns were done in the past. I'm just trying to count how many stitches I got. Okay. They've been done in the past, but there was, if you look at some of them, there were really no standards saying how that pattern should work, what it should look like, and all of that kind of stuff, right? So that stuff's important, right? Because when you pick up a pattern and you want to do a pattern, you want to make sure it's something you can read. So, I'm just 1, 2, 3. With this objective in mind and based on the industry input, the Council has compiled the following helpful designer guidelines. They include everything from tips on submitting your project idea to common pitfalls to avoid, and finally to guidelines that should always be followed when submitting your final project. So they include everything from tips on submitting the project idea to common pitfalls to avoid, and finally to guidelines that should always be followed when submitting your final project. These guidelines do not replace those of individual companies, however. Many will follow them, and they represent the base standards which have been adopted by all members of the Council and industry publishers. Accordingly, if designers want their submissions to be accepted, it is important for them to incorporate these standards into their project patterns. So, we're going to learn what standards we need to keep in our keep around, right? So we need to know how and what is expected from us to do the job we are trying to do. So what you want is the ability to work and make your patterns work, right? So you don't want to sit there and do opposite of what the standards are, because people aren't going to buy, they're not going to buy your project, okay? So you want to submit a project idea. Where do you start? Okay, so you've come up with your idea, right? And it's a good idea as far as you're concerned. Why do I have more stitches than I should? Did I do 4 or 5? 1, 2, 3. I missed a stitch, that's why. Okay, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4. I need a 5th. See, I counted wrong. So see, you have to be careful when you're counting, right? Making sure you're counting the right number and you're getting to the correct spot when you do your center point. If you do your center point somewhere and it's the wrong spot, it's going to throw your whole center spine of your shawl off, and then it's not going to look correct, right? So now I'm going to do my 5 pearls, just like I said. So, once you reviewed where to start, you're encouraged to read Designer Pitfalls and Congratulations, you received the go-ahead. So we will be reading that. So contact the company or magazine and ask how they prefer to have project ideas submitted. If you're not sure how to contact them, check the magazine's mastered math. I don't know what that word is. Magazines, MASTHEAD, for an address or yarn label to see where the company is headquartered. So you want to keep track of all of this stuff. I'm just trying to figure out where I left off on my count. I have 2. Okay. Each company magazine will have its own company specific requirements, or refer you to this website, Industry Standard Guidelines for Designers. So they're either going to tell you to submit your design based on industry standards and guidelines, which is what we're reading now, or what they decide to do, and they'll direct you to their requirements. Generally, companies and magazines will ask for you to submit a sketch and knitted or crocheted swatch rather than the completed project. However, many will consider a completed project. So you need to make sure that when you're checking out, do you have the project the way they want it? Do they want a completed project? I don't know. Let's find out. Then do they just want the swatch and a drawing? Because I can do that too. So we're starting to get a little tiny shawl started. See? We're starting to. There's our center spine. We have a center spine right up the center. And then we have our rows. Submit your design concept to one company or magazine at a time. If a company or magazine accepts the design, they will expect it to be exclusive to them. So make sure that whoever you're submitting your project to is the project that you need, and that you're submitting to only one company. Okay? Submit your design concept to one company or magazine at a time. When you submit a swatch, sketch, or sample, remember to label it with your name and contact information, including your address, phone number, and area code and email address. Include a postage paid envelope with your submission if you want it returned. It is the responsibility of the designer to pay for postage. So if you send it off and you want it back, make sure you put that postage paid envelope inside so they'll send it back to you. Many companies and magazines will confirm that they have received your submission and will tell you approximately when they will get back to you, or they may return your idea immediately because it doesn't fit their needs. Generally, you can expect the submission review process to take between 2 and 8 weeks. Okay, so now we're doing knit to yarn over. Many companies, okay. Why does it take so long? Manufacturers or editors might be preparing for trade shows or rushing to meet magazine deadlines. Refrain from continuing calling about your submission. Do not call them. Just let it sit there. You've submitted it, and when they can, they'll get to it, and they'll see if it fits into what they're going to be working on. A lot of times I know that I've seen that they'll put out a call for what kind of designs they're looking for. So, you got to kind of work with them. It's one of those things, you work with them. If your design is accepted, generally a design fee will be discussed in advance and a contract issued. At this point, we strongly urge you that you read the information contained at this website regarding designer pitfalls and the do's and don'ts of project submissions. So good luck. Okay, so we've got that one down, right? Do we understand that one? I think we do. Okay, this is going to have 2, 4, 6, 7. So, yeah, so that's basically what I was going to decide. There is a downloadable guidelines PDF. Next Friday, we're going to read about the pitfalls, okay? I'm going to put a link to the standard guidelines compiled by the Yarn Council. It's very in-depth, and it's the whole thing. The whole thing that we're reading is going to be right here. So I want to read this first part because I think it's going to be really good. So it says, the publishers, fiber, needle, and hook manufacturers and yarn members of the Craft Yarn Council have worked together to set up a series of guidelines and symbols to bring uniformity to yarn, needle, and hook labeling, and to the patterns, whether they appear in books, magazines, leaflets, or on yarn labels. Our goal is to make it easier for industry manufacturers, publishers, and designers to prepare consumer-friendly products, and for consumers to select the right materials for a project and complete it successfully. Right? So you want to be able to successfully complete your project. It is the way to go, right? We urge manufacturers, publishers, and designers to adopt these guidelines. Downloads of the graphic symbols are available at www.yarnstandards.com at no charge. We ask that if you use them in any publication that you advise us in an email of your intention to use them, and that the following credit would be given. Craft Yarn Council as the source, and the www.yarnstandards.com is the email, is the website. Okay, you need to source them. So I will be sourcing them on my slide. Okay, and in the description we'll have all the details of where you can find this information and where it is, because the Craft Yarn Council's guidelines are important. If you ever want to design anything, you have to have a good understanding of it. We're going to be going through a lot of it as we go through the channel. I think the yarn standards are very important and something that should be followed. So we received valuable input from allied associations in the United States, such as the National Needle Arts Association, the Crochet Guild of America, and the Knitting Guild Association, as well as designer and consumers. Ultimately, our objective is to design global standards and guidelines that will be used by companies worldwide. To this end, we have reached out to individuals, manufacturers, and trade associations in the United Kingdom, Germany, Italy, France, as well as Australia and New Zealand to ask for their input. So the Yarn Council is putting things together, and they have the input of all of these people. And these people on the board are the ones that originally adopted the standards, right? So it goes into wraps per inch, project levels, standard body sizing, measuring and sizing, your ease and fit chart, length chart, how to measure. Then it's got the size chart for baby, child, youth, woman, man, head, foot, and hand. Standard yard weight system, schematics, hooks and needles, steel hooks and crochet hooks, and thread, yarn label information, care symbols, designer guidelines. So we're going over the designer guidelines we did before you submit your design. The design submission, the submission process, how companies process submissions, what happens after a design is accepted, before you begin the project, the completed project, the pattern, and sending an invoice, and then Craft Yarn Council information. So that's what's going to be included in this big standard guides for crocheting and knitting. And if you are going to design anything or be a part of that world, you really need to pay attention to this particular process. Okay, so I'm going to finish up this row. It's almost done. I will be working on this. I will get it done if I can by next Friday. If not, it will be available once we get done with it, okay? So I'll either have it done or be ready to go to the next stage when we get done with this part. So it's going to take me some time to work up this part of the part. It does have already 125 stitches in the rows that we have completed. So I have 3 skeins of this yarn, and so we will be weighing the yarn. I will be weighing the yarn once I get my gauge swatch done, so that we know how many ounces of yarn is needed in the project, okay? So, and then I'll do an ultimate weight of the shawl when it's done. Okay, so I think what we're going to do going forward for the rest, I'm going to go ahead and close down this this call. However, it's not a call, I'm sorry, this video. I really do want to kind of go over these, I think we're going to skip and we're going to go past the crochet right now, but since we're knitting this particular project and we're doing knits, we're going to go ahead and skip down to the knit section. We can come back to the crochet once we're done. But the next thing we'll be doing tomorrow will be, or next Friday, we'll be reading Knitting Abbreviations Master List. So we're going to go through all the abbreviations, kind of going over what you should normally see, okay? So if you're doing a knitting project, you should be able to have the Abbreviations Master List from the Standard and Guidelines and find every one that you use there in this list, okay? If not, then maybe it's a new stitch or something, and just really pay attention to it and see how it goes. So we'll be starting that tomorrow. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If not, a thumbs down, fine. But please let us know in the comment section below why. We don't mind constructive criticism. We want to do things that are going to help the channel, build the channel, make it a fun channel to be to. I do want to thank our new subscriber for coming on and hitting that subscriber button. Welcome to the family. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please put them down below. I will be happy to answer any of those. I'd love to hear what you're working on. Do you have a special project? Are you diamond painting? Are you knitting? Are you crocheting? Do you do multiple crafts? I like the fact that I can do all of my multiple crafts on the channel and feel that I have a part of, and I'm part of a community. And I want you to feel the same. I want you to feel like when you come to our channel, you feel a sense of community. So, with that said, if you want to be part of the family, all you have to do is hit that subscribe button just down below. Hit that subscribe button. Give us some likes. Let's get this channel growing. We are growing slowly. I have to sit down this weekend. Now that I've got my videos for this week done, I will be going through and setting up for videos next week, see where we're going to be and work from there. But with that said, I want to thank you all for coming. And if you want to know when I upload that video, go ahead and hit that bell icon. It'll let you know every time I do. But with that said, I want to thank you all for coming. It's going to be fun working on our shawl that we are creating as we go. I'm trying to make sure it's like on the pink background instead of the dark, so you can see it, because it is a little thing. I will probably take a picture of what we got here so that that can be at the front. We're actually showing the shawl that we're working on and designing in the picture. So with that said, I want to thank you all for coming and wish you a very happy weekend, and I look forward to talking to you next Tuesday. See you later. Bye-bye.